And so what happens is a kind of, in relationships, is what I call mutual triggering. If one of you gets triggered and the other one holds firm, you're in pretty good shape. I get to say, everybody in a relationship gets to go crazy, but you have to take turns. So if one of you's off and the other one stays put, that's a good day for you. If both of you go off, then that's when the difficult, vicious cycle repeats and keeps going on. The way mutual triggering works is, so for example, my wife, Belinda, and I both come from fighting families. We both come from fairly violent, critical families. Belinda walks in the door and she goes, "I can't believe what a mess it is in here." I immediately get triggered. My wounded child gets triggered. I'm like 3 or 4 years old and my big father is standing there yelling at me the way he did. I'm no longer talking to Belinda. I'm that little boy talking to this big, towering figure. I have about 2 seconds worth of tolerance for those feelings of helplessness, and I get pumped up into my adaptation, which is fight. And I can't believe it. You walk in and you do this. And now, when I get critical of Belinda, guess what happens to her? Her wounded child gets trauma triggered. She's that little girl facing her screaming mother, not me. And her adaptation, her adaptive child, comes in to take over, which is fight. We're a symmetrical couple. Fight meets fight. And there we are. When you're in these kinds of vicious circles, it's adaptive child meets adaptive child. The two of you, the real adults, can sit down and have a beer because they're duking it out. It's got nothing to do with you anymore. And so the first skill, I believe, the proto skill, I call relational mindfulness, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot to say about this, Thomas. But the first skill is, and this can be cultivated, is that you take a breath, you realize that you've been triggered, and you bring some, I've heard you say, I love this line of yours, in relationships, urgency is our enemy and breath is our friend. You take that breath and you get yourself centered in your body, and you bring yourself out of that triggered adaptive child back into the wise adult part of you. I call this, in real life, remembering love. You move out of the adversarial me versus you of the adaptive child into the abundant us, the whole of the relationship that the wise adult can appreciate. You remember that the person you're speaking to is not your enemy, but someone you love. Or said differently, you remember the whole, you remember the ecology. Our relationships are like our biospheres. And you remember that this is not a win-lose zero-sum game. There's enough here for everybody if we can keep centered in the whole, which means getting centered in our own selves.
That's beautiful, Terry. Also, that when we come back, I often say in the healing work that in doubt, come back to the closest circle of intimacy, which is your self-contact, you feeling yourself. So if you get triggered in life, or if you get unclear or whatever, so I take a breath and I see if I can reconnect to my body. And if I can practice that at least 5 minutes every day in the morning, I mean, the longer the better, but 5 minutes, my breath is my best friend, or one of my best friends, because it's with me from day one after birth. And it's wired in my nervous system ever since. So when I'm breathing, I can get access to my body contact. And my body is the grounding of stress. As you said before, like when trauma gets triggered, there are a few things that usually come with it. I feel separate. There's me and there is you. There's not anymore us. Me and you are over there. Before we were together in a flow. It's very important. Flow states are relational exchange. Me here, you over there, there's usually separation. And that separation is an illusion, but it's so true in that moment because everything in me believes in the trauma fragmentation. It comes with feelings of the past, like fear or shame or anger or other emotional sensations or sensations of numbness, so that I simply don't feel myself anymore. And when that happens, I need to come back to a place that I can sense and feel in myself. And then from me, to you, because trauma has another symptom that it comes with, that is, I'm speeding up, I'm getting really stressed, I'm getting fast. If I'm getting fast, I need to slow down. And trauma comes with a sense of scarcity. Every time we hit trauma, it feels like something's not enough. There's not enough for me, and there's not enough for you. There's not enough time, there's not enough space, there's not enough something. And when we sense that, we know this is a symptom. This is not the trauma itself, as you said, Terry. The trauma itself is hidden in our unconscious most of the time, but the sensations that come from that place are very, very strong. Because what we experienced at that time really overwhelmed us, and we become defensive. And those defense mechanisms were intelligent functions that was the best that we could do as a kid or at that time to help ourselves. And of course, today it creates a lot of symptoms in our relationships.